Good morning, Morai v'Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Rosh Hashanah. We are on Daf Chaftet Amud Bet, barely just starting the fourth and final parak of the Masechta, which really is dedicated to the mitzvah of Tkiyat Shofar. Some history in the beginning, the first Mishnah of how it was when Rosh Hashanah fell to be on Shabbat in the time of the Mikdash, and subsequently after the Churban. And then basically we're going to get into whether or not you could carry the lulav and the shofar on Shabbat. The actual reason, takana midrabanan, the reason we don't blow shofar on Shabbat or take lulav and etrog on Shabbat nowadays. And then we get into the actual crux of the tkiyat shofar and how it was, and how it has to be done, which really concludes the parak in that way. Says the Mishnah. We started the Mishnah quickly yesterday. Gonna just do a quick chazara. Yom Tov shel Rosh Hashanah shchal liyot b'Shabbat b'Mikdash hayu tokin aval lo b'Medina. Yom Tov av Rosh Hashanah, when he felt to be on Shabbat. In Mikdash they would blow shofar, but not in Medina. Now Rashi understands Mikdash is the Beit HaMikdash, and Medina means Yerushalayim. That even in Yerushalayim, they would not blow shofar in the time of the Beit HaMikdash when Rosh Hashanah fell to be on Shabbat. You had to be in the Mikdash to hear shofar. Rambam understands in Pirush Mishnayot that the Mikdash includes also Yerushalayim, and Medina means the rest of Eretz Yisrael. But Yerushalayim, they would do in Yerushalayim. Not just in the Mikdash, but also in Yerushalayim. This will have ramifications later in the Mishnah and the Gemara as well. So says the Mishnah, Mishachara Bet HaMikdash Etkira Charam ben Zakkai. Charam ben Zakkai, who was the Nasi at the time, one of the takanot that he made was Sheyu Tokin Bechol Makom, because now you don't have the Beit HaMikdash. So technically speaking, you would come out that you shouldn't be blowing any shofar, especially according to the way Rashi understands the Mishnah, because you're not necessarily in Yerushalayim anymore, but you don't have the Beit HaMikdash for sure. But according to the Rambam, we have to understand, if for those Jews who were in Yerushalayim, would that without takana be still something that he would consider, or is it an offshoot of having the shofar blown in Beit HaMikdash that you could also do it in Yerushalayim? But be that as it may, the takana of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was that even though that we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, and perhaps he would argue we shouldn't have Tkiyat Shofar at all when it comes to Rosh Hashanah shechal liyot b'Shabbat, he instituted that no, we're going to have it. But how so? Sheyu tokin bechol makom sheyesh bo bedin. That in any place that there is bedin, you should still be blowing shofar. Now, how do you understand that? Pay attention to the language of Tanakama. Any place that has bedin, you could blow shofar in the bedin. So says the Mishnah, Amar Rabbi Elazar says, wait a second, that's not true. Lo itkin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ela b'Yavne bilvad. Where was he? Remember when Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, historically, some historical fact, the Gemara in Gittin explains that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai really wanted to make peace and surrender to the Romans. The Baryonim were against it. They said we have to fight. And there was an internal civil war, basically, between the Baryonim and Chachamim. And the Baryonim, actually, Yerushalayim was set to be under siege for 21 years and would be surviving. There's no way from outside to really penetrate easily. And the Baryonim said, the security is not a good thing. We're going to burn down the reservoirs of food and fuel and all of that to force the people into a war. And they did that, and it was a self-imposed famine. It was a disaster. People were dying all over the place. So what they did was, the head of the Baryonim was the nephew of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and he told him, he said, look, this is already too much. He said, yeah, I agree. says, do something about it. I said, I can't, they'll kill me. This is like a snowball that nobody could stand in front of it at this moment. It's become big enough and dangerous enough that if I, even as the head of the Bar Yonim, say something, they'll kill me. So he at least got from him that they're going to let him go, pretending that he's dead in a coffin. And that's how he got out. He negotiated with the emperor-to-be, and so on. And he asked for, one of the three things he asked for was Yavne v'chachameh. I said, do not destroy Yavne. Don't touch Yavne. So Yavne became the epicenter of Jewish life after the Churban. That's why Rabbi Gamliel, who became Nasi 10 years after the Churban, 10 years after Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai took over, I should say, he was called Rabbi Gamliel the Yavne. Right? And Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai himself was in Yavne after the Churban. So where was this takana? So now you can understand the Mishnah a little bit better, because Rabbi Elazar says, wait a second, he made it, this was a very temporary, very specific takana, made only for Yavne. And says the Mishnah, they disagreed with him, the Chachamim disagreed with him. Amru lo, echad Yavne ve'echad kol makom sheyesh bo bedin. It's not only in Yavne, but any place that has bedin in it, they were metaken that this should be the halacha. Right? Which sounds on the surface like, who's Amru lo? The Chachamim were the Tanna Kama. That's how it seems like. You'll see in the Gemara is going to understand these as three different shitas. There's Tanna Kama, there's Rabbi Elazar who disagrees, and then Amru lo is a third shita that disagrees also with Tanna Kama, as we'll see. Ve'od zot ha'ayta Yerushalayim yetera al Yavne. Not only that, but Yerushalayim was even better than Yavne. Not only that, it wasn't only in Yavne, but Yerushalayim was better than Yavne because Shkol Ir she'ir ro'ah ve'shomat ve'krova ve'yechola lavo took in. We'll see what these things mean, but any surrounding immediate cities that could hear or see or close enough to come, they will be tokea, and Yavne lo hayu tokin ela bebedim bilvad. In Yavne, they will only do it in Tibetan, not in the surrounding areas. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihya b'dvaro. Says the Gemara, how do we know? How do we know that when Rosh Hashanah falls to be on Shabbat, we don't blow the shofar? Why not? Blow the shofar. Says the Gemara, Amar Reb Levi bar Lachma Amar Reb Chama bar Chanina Katuv echad omer. We learn it from a seeming discrepancy between two psukim who speak about the blowing of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Katuv echad omer, one pasuk says, Shabbaton zichron teruah, that Rosh Hashanah is Shabbaton zichron teruah, the remembering of teruah. Zikaron. That's all it is, a remembering of teruah. V'katuv echad omer, and a different pasuk says, Yom teruah yeh lachem. It will be a day of blowing teruah, not just zichron teruah, remembering it, but actually a yom teruah yeh lachem. Fine, says the Gemara, lo kasha. Says the Gemara, it's not a question. Kan b'yom tov shchal liyot b'Shabbat. One of them is in a yom tov shchal liyot b'Shabbat, that fell to be on Shabbat. When Shabbaton zichron teruah means when it's on Shabbat. Well, not the Shabbaton is called anyways Rosh Hashanah, but it's zichron teruah when it falls to be on Shabbat. Kan b'yom tov shchal liyot b'chol. And the other one is a regular weekday Rosh Hashanah. Then it's going to be Yom Teruah Yeh Lachem. It's a day that actually you will be blowing teruah. Amar Rava. Rava says, okay, that's very amazing, but I have a problem with this. The problem is, imidoraita, then b'mikdash hechitak inan. If midoraita you should not be blowing shofar on Rosh Hashanah that falls to be on Shabbat, then why would you blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah that fell to be on Shabbat in Bet HaMikdash? I thought the pasuk says, if the pasuk says that zichron teruah, and when it falls to be on Shabbat, you only remember it, you don't blow it. Why would you blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah in Bet HaMikdash? Then second kasha, halav melachahi. What's wrong with doing shofar? Shofar is not a melacha. What are you doing? Blowing shofar? What kind of which one of the 39 melachot does this categorize at? It's not a melacha. There's strict kral ma'uti that you need a pasuk to come and exclude blowing shofar. The Tana Rabbi Yisraeli, the Tana Rabbi Shmuel that we learned in the Bet Midrash of Shmuel, Kol melechet avodah lo tasu. When the pasuk says about Shabbat, Kol melechet avodah lo tasu, don't do any work. Yatztat kiat shofar v'rediyat apat. There are two things that the pasuk is actually excluding. One is blowing shofar, and the other one is rediyat apat, the process of baking bread, included having to stick the bread inside the tanur, right there, tanurim, where like kind of vertical, and you would go and still in some places have them, and you have to go in and stick the bread, the challah, inside the wall of the tanur, and then you had to take it off without, it's all chachma when to take it off, and it's not sticky, it's baked, but it's not too baked, right? When you see people do it, now there are places in the world that they do that. They make it seem effortless, but it's one of the hardest things to do. It's a chokhmah, how to stick it, how to take it off. So it says, Tana B'Shmuel, that Ridiyata Pat is also together with Kiyat Shofar. It's not a melacha, because what type of melacha is that? It's a chokhmah. It's an expertise that you have to have, but it's not a melacha. Kiyat Shofar v'Ridiyata Pat, she chokhmah ve'ina melacha. It's a chokhmah, it's an expertise, but it's not considered a melacha, because what are you doing? So meaning, if you're taking off the bread off of the tanur, not doing a melacha, sticking it in, maybe melechet ofeh, but taking it off, what am I doing? Blowing shofar, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. So therefore, to suggest that's midoraita will be very shver, very hard to understand. So Rava, based on these two kashyas, says, Ela midoraita mishrashari. Midoraita really is mutar. V'rabanan hu de gazurba. And Chachamim are the ones who made this gezerah not to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah Shchaliyot b'Shabbat, when Rosh Hashanah is on Shabbat. Kederabba, and this is like Rabba Dama Rabba, Hakol Chayavin b'Tkiyat Shofar. Everybody is chayav to blow shofar. Ve'en Hakol b'Ki'in b'Tkiyat Shofar, but not everybody is a baki in Tkiyat Shofar. So therefore, we are concerned that because everyone is obligated, but not everyone knows the details of how long every tkiyah has to be, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 6 seconds. How do you break it? How do you have 1 breath, 2 breaths? So many difficulties and complexities in halachot of tkiyah shofar. So we're very concerned that a person is going to take his shofar and run to the next door neighbor and say, oh, this guy just learned the sugya of tkiyat shofar in Amud Yomi, so I'm going to go to him and learn the halachot. And meanwhile, he's so fatumult that he doesn't realize that this year is Shabbat, and he's going to walk with his shofar in Rosh Hashanah and get into trouble. And he's going to carry this shofar dalet amot b'Rosh Hashanah.
So how does that answer the question about the Bet HaMikdash?
Well, because, it's a good question. Because in Bet HaMikdash, we're not choshesh. The Kohanim, the people who are in charge of the Bet HaMikdash, they are zerizim. They're very careful. And they know the halacha. They're not leaving the mitzvah of Tkiyat Shofar to the hands of laymen all over the country. You're leaving it up to the experts only in one place, which is very much under control. We're not worried that the experts, Gedolei Talmidei Chachamim in the Mikdash, they're going to forget and carry something on Shabbat. It's very controllable. So it says, and that's the same reason that you don't shake lulav on first day of Chag HaSukkot that falls to be on Shabbat, and that's the same reason for not reading Megillat Esther when Purim falls to be on Shabbat, because everyone is chayav to read Megillah, everyone is chayav to take lulav, everyone is chayav to blow shofar, to hear shofar, and if you leave it open, then some layman maybe get excited and forget that today's Shabbat. He doesn't know how to read Megillah, he doesn't know how to tie the lulav, or how to take lulav and shake lulav, or blow the shofar, and they're going to come to carry it to someone else to teach them, and that will become a problem. Mishachar Bet HaMikdash, says the first line, wide line of the Gemara, the Mishnah said that from the day that Bet HaMikdash got destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was metaken, that in any place that you have betin, you will be blowing shofar, not just in Yerushalayim or in Bet HaMikdash. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara, Pam Achat, this actually was the story. Pam Achat, Chal Rosh Hashanah liot b'Shabbat. There was a Rosh Hashanah that fell to be on Shabbat. This is probably the first Rosh Hashanah that fell to be on Shabbat after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Ve'hayu kol ha'am mitkanesin, and the whole nation was coming in to hear shofar by the betin in wherever they were in Yavne. Amar lahem Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lebnei Betera. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai told the Bnei Betera. Bnei Betera were the Gedolei Ador, were the Gedolei Talmidei Chachamim of the generation, the Asher Avot Bedin, right? So they had to kind of like flush out this psak. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai tricks them, kind of. He says to them, he says, Nitka, let's blow shofar. People are coming, let's blow shofar. Amru lo, they told him, no, nidon. Let's first decide if this is the right halakha, right? Because, last time we had this, we had the Beit HaMikdash, so we knew what the halakha was. We did it in the Mikdash. Havalo in Medina, have Rashi, Rambam, Machloket. But now we have to decide what to do going forward. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai tells him, Amar lahem, he tells them, Nitkav achar kach nidon. He says, this year already, the people, it's too late to want to judge. People are coming in. Let's blow shofar and then we'll figure it out for next time. And they said, fine, right? So, okay. After they blew the shofar, Bnei Betera tell him, Amru lo, nidon. Let's now sit down and figure this out. He said, too late. We already established here that you blow shofar on Shabbat in the Betin. Amar lahem kvar nishme'a keren beyavne. Already in the greatest Torah town in the world, the Yavne, they heard the shofar on Shabbat, and it has been established. Now we're going to go back and say we made a mistake. What does that tell people, especially after the Churban? You need to have established a strong leadership, right? He basically told them, we're not doing it. He established already that the halakha is Shabbat. When the thing falls to be on Shabbat, we blow shofar. Again, this was part of, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did not go around doing this every day. This was part of his takana. You have to speak about why exactly this takana was there. But part of the takana, he had to establish that we do it in the Betin. Now that we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, we still have the Betin, we'll do it in Betin. And you can't go back and try to answer up or argue after the Maaseh was done. Here we did Maaseh, and that's that. Amar Rabbi Elazar said, well, Lo yitkin Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai ela beyavneh. Again, this is going back to the Mishnah. Well, the structure of the Mishnah was that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, after the Churban, instituted that any place that has Bedin, should be blowing shofar. Rabbi Elazar said, no, it wasn't everywhere. He only instituted this in Yavne. And then the Gemara says, Amru lo in the Mishnah, they told Rabbi Elazar, no, you're wrong. He did it everywhere. In the language of the Mishnah, Amru lo, Echad Yavne ve'echad kol makom sheyesh po bedin. So Echad Yavne ve'echad kol makom sheyesh lo bedin is the third memra, the third shita in the Mishnah, and the first shita was Hitkin Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai sheyu tokin bechol makom sheyesh po bedin. Right? So it's almost identical. Bechol makom sheyesh lo bedin, and the second one says kol makom sheyesh po bedin. Echad Yavne ve'echad kol makom sheyesh lo bedin. Like you would read the Mishnah thinking that it's the same Tarakama, the Chachamim of the beginning of the Mishnah are disagreeing with him, and they're saying, no, you're wrong. You suggesting that it was only in Yavne who instituted this? No, he did it everywhere. Now Gemara is going to differ from that. The Gemara is going to say, Amru lo echad Yavne ve'echad kol makom sheyesh po bedin. Says the Gemara, Amru lo hainu Tarakama. What kind of Amru lo is that? It's identical with Tarakama. So if it's identical, let me try to explain this, why the Gemara is going to do what he's going to do. If there would be a machloket Tarakama on Rabbi Elazar, would you have to go back and repeat the same exact thing as when you said before? Tarakama said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was metaken, any place that has betin, you blow shofar. Rabbi Elazar said, no, it wasn't every place, it was only in Yavne. Will you again go back and say, no, they said it's everywhere? You're not talking about 5-year-olds going back and forth the same, repeating it. Obviously, the Mishnah is not repeating the same thing as before. So if it sounds to be the same exact identical argument, we are missing something. If it would be adding something, if it would be clarifying something, we could understand that it's the same shita clarifying something more. But if it's just repeating it, well, going by, it's a shouting match, who's louder? Obviously not. So therefore, the Gemara says there are 3 shitas here. It may sound like 2, but obviously it's not 2. When you read the Mishnah, you could be a third grader reading the Mishnah, and you would ask this question. It can't be that the Mishnah is repeating what it said before without any chidush. So it must be a third shita. And that's exactly what it is. Says the Gemara, it's not the same Tarakama. Ika benaihu bedina de akrai. There is a difference between Tarakama and this last shita of Amrulo, and the difference is bedin de akrai. That means if you have a bedin at this moment right now on Rosh Hashanah, but they don't belong to this town, right? It's a temporary betin. It's not a betin kavua of this town. It's not an established betin in this town. So in that case, Tanakama holds that any place that you have betin, you'll blow. And therefore, even if you have a betin akrai, you'll still blow shofar. Rabbi Elazar disagrees. He said, no, only Yavne. And Amrulo says, not this and not that. It's not that we will blow just in any place that you find the betin together, but it's also not just Yavne. But just like Yavne was a established betin, any place, any other place that has an established betin, not a temporary betin da'akrai, but established betin, then you will be blowing shofar. In the language of Rashi, L'Tanakama takinan in betin da'akrai v'tana de'amrulo savar echad Yavne v'echad kol makom sheyesh po betin kavua dum yad Yavne. That's why the word Yavne is mentioned there. Echad Yavne v'echad kol makom sheyesh po betin is comparing the kol makom sheyesh po betin to Yavne. Just like Yavne was an established, strong bedin, any place that is established, strong, kavua bedin, that's when we're going to blow shofar in the bedin. So says the Gemara, אמרו לו, אחד יבנה ואחד כל מקום שיש פה בית דין. אמר רב הונא, now see what the Amoraim felt about this. ואם בית דין, my ve'im beit din. Rav Huna said, it's with the beit din that we blow shofar. Right? I mean, it's not just b'makom beit din, in a city that you have a beit din, but a beit din has to be there. Right? Ve'im beit din, that means you will blow shofar with the beit din. Mar says, what does it mean exactly? My ve'im beit din. Bifnei beit din, la'afuk shelo bifnei beit din. The law. It means you have to do it mamash in the presence of Bedin. If you don't have the presence of Bedin at the moment, at the place, then you're not going to be blowing shofar. Mativ Rava asked the question, Ve'od zot hayta Yerushalayim yetera al Yavne. The Mishnah says that Yerushalayim was more than Yavne, that in Yerushalayim you would do it in any place that would be seen with it, hear it, be able to come to it. You would still blow shofar. Right? So it says, the Gemara, when you read this Mishnah, my ve'od zot, what does it mean exactly? If you want to say, as we explained it when we read the Mishnah, then, Zot mi baile. Ela de Yerushalayim tok in yechidin, ube Yavnen tok in yechidin. You have to understand that in Yerushalayim, even a yachid without the bedin could be tokea, and in Yavne, en tok in yechidin, a regular individual would not be able to blow shofar. Ube Yavne en tok in yechidin. V'haki ata Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef Amar. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, when he came, he said, Ki mesayem shlicha de sibura tki'a beyavne. When the shaliach tzibur would finish his tki'a in Yavne, lo shama inishkal une mikol tki'a de yechidai. Right? Mikol teku'aya de yechidai. Once the Shaliach Tzibur would finish, the Yechidim would start, and you couldn't hear a thing because it was so loud, everybody was blowing shofar. Right? So that's what actually happened in Yavne. And I loved it, so don't tell me that in Yerushalayim they would blow, Yechidim would blow shofar, but not in Yavne. That can't be. Because we have an edut that in Yavne also, once they would, the Shaliach would finish, everybody would be blowing shofar. Now, we have to talk about this as a halachic factor, how exactly it would do, because when you're yotze, you're chiyuv, right? Even on a regular Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah, once you're yotze, you're chiyuv of Tkiyat Shofar, shofar is muktzeh, right? You can't just go around blowing shofar the whole day. You can't do that. Can't do that.
For individuals who haven't heard it, you could.
Yeah, of course you could, because they haven't heard and you're blowing for them, right? You could go the entire day blowing shofar for people. But stars at your home, you want to show your capabilities to your family or to guests, and then all been yotzei the chovah, then obviously not. So says the Gemara, Lav de Yerushalayim took in ben bizman bedin u ben shelo bizman bedin u beyavne bizman bedin in shelo bizman bedin lo. So must be the difference is that in Yerushalayim you do it whether bizman bedin, whether shelo bizman bedin. In other words, so long as the bedin has not gone home, they're still there, present. You could do, even Yechidim could do, but once they go home, in Yavne they would not be able to do any more Yechidim, but in Yerushalayim they could still go, because in Yerushalayim you're not bound to the presence of Bedin. That must be the difference. So says the Gemara, Ha bisman bedin mia tokin. But at the time that the bedin is present there, you can be blowing shofar in Yavne. Right? Even if it's not mamash in presence of the bedin. Bisman bedin would be sufficient even if they're not mamash present there where you're blowing before, so long as they have not gone home, so to speak, right? Ben Shlo bisman bedin, Rashi in the last wide line says, shehalchu lebatehen, right? That's what it means. So you see, but that even bisman bedin, when they're not present but they're still there, you could be able to blow shofar. Says the Gemara, even if it's not in front of them. So says the Gemara, no, the Ilu Yerushalayim took in ben bifnei bedin ben shelo bifnei bedin. In Yerushalayim, you would be blowing shofar whether in presence of bedin, whether not in presence of bedin. Ubeyavne bifnei bedin in shelo bifnei bedin lo. The bisman really means that they are mamash there, not that they didn't go home, but they're not there. But bisman bedin means they're there. So in Yerushalayim, that's exactly the difference. In Yerushalayim, you could be blowing shofar whether the bedin is there, whether the bedin is not there. But in Yavne, you could only do it mamash bifnei bedin. So back to the top line of the Amud, when Amar of Huna says ve'im bedin, means the takana was there has to be in presence of bedin. Just like in Yavne was in presence of bedin, in any other place also it has to be in presence of bedin. Now, there is another way of reading this Gemara, the Fa'ika de Matnila, which is going to differ a little bit from here what we the way we presented it right now, but that will leave Bezat Hashem for the next shiur. Hazaku Baruch.